All right, welcome to the March 8th, 2021 Derby Public Schools Board of Education meeting. Thank you for everybody attending here and online. Let's begin our meeting by standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll remain standing for our moment of silence. All right, the first item tonight is our adoption of our agenda.
So moved.
All right, got a motion?
Second.
Robin seconds. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, 7-0. Next up is presentations, and we've got Tanglewood Elementary presentation and years of service with Shannon Demmel.
Maybe.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting us to the board meeting tonight. First time in the board meeting, or in the new boardroom, so quite a treat here. So tonight we're just going to talk about a few things that have been going on at Tanglewood this year. We've had a lot of exciting things happening. One being our brand new logo that we are super excited about. We're so excited about it. We had it painted gigantically in our hallway, which has been an awesome tradition that's been at Tanglewood for as long as Tanglewood has been built. There's been this eerie tiger coming down at you. This one's much more friendly, and the kiddos really took to it as soon as they saw this massive mural on our wall. So working through that process with our students was really great. For them to be able to see it big and proud on their wall has been really phenomenal this year. So some things that we want to celebrate this year is that our construction is finished. So as of last Friday, our final piece was opened up, and that is the soccer field kind of up on the hill that's adjoining between our two buildings. So we had a drone picture from Mr. Rothy that was sent to us, so it kind of sees an outline of our new space as well as our shelter, which we also got to practice our very first tornado drill in our new shelter for the very first time. It went marvelously well. I was a little bit nervous on how it would all go. We intentionally did some things like leaving furniture in place because that's what it's going to be like should we ever have to really use it. But we had every one of our students and staff members in that building and secured in 6 minutes and 22 seconds, which I thought was fantastic for our very first time. We do have some things that we feel like we can shave some time off of that and get like right around that 5-minute mark. So some goals to hit there. But this is also a picture of one of our new classrooms that we were able to add in our computer lab this year due to our bond. So lots of exciting things happening there. Oh, and I had a hat on because it was Spirit Week. So some other things. Even though COVID has brought a lot of different things into our lives over the last year, we are still doing a lot of wonderful things at Tanglewood. We are still doing a lot of hands-on activities, just in a little bit of a different manner than we normally would. Like, kids don't go up and pick their Oreos for the moon phases. They were put in baggies for them to be able to continue with some of these really rich educational things that we are doing. VR goggles, we are really taking our MCASP grant dollars and putting those to use. We've still been able to, and this is something that's been wonderful through COVID, is we are traveling the world at Tanglewood through different virtual field trips that have been opened up to us due to this pandemic, places that our students would never get to visit at this age. So there's been some really wonderful things that have come out of COVID as well. Again, there's another new classroom that's showcasing some of all of our new equipment that are in those classrooms, which has been wonderful. In the middle there, you see Mr. Tyndall. This was way back in August, can't believe that, but we have amazing staff in Derby Public Schools, and we spend a lot of money on training our staff members, but sometimes our best resources are free because they're in our buildings. And so Mr. Tyndall has been to several of the elementary schools. He was a part of our pilot program for our new math curriculum, and he has done a phenomenal job. Actually, the trainers that trained him actually sent a message to Dr. Putnam Jackson about how wonderful he did teaching that curriculum. So he's kind of been a showcase through our district, and here he is showcasing those skills, teaching all of our Tanglewood teachers how best practices work in that new curriculum. And then this picture of all of us in the sea of red, we were actually featured on KWCH News for all of our Chiefs spirit during Super Bowl week. So that was really fun. They had a nice little video for our kiddos that were on there. And then we have Mr. Dunn here, remote learning. There's been a lot of really great things happening in remote. Mr. Dunn has been remote all year long, and he has done a phenomenal job doing that. He has kids from all over the district in his class. So we're just spreading the Tanglewood love all through the district this year. Some other celebration is our parental support continues to be strong at Tanglewood through virtual paint nights. We had a book fair where we did a coin drive. We knew our book sales wouldn't be the same as they were in person. So we challenged our kiddos to bring a different coin each day of the week, and we raised over right at $1,300 just in coins in 5 days. So that extra recess was really a kicker for them, though. But it was a great competition, and all of that money went to be able to buy books for our library and our classroom teachers. Whoops, I went the wrong way, sorry. Some challenges. Due to construction, our playground has been extremely limited, but when we look at challenges at Tanglewood, we look at how we can turn these into positives. So something that's super exciting is this summer, this will be added to our play structures outside. The theme that we chose was fitness. Obviously, we have our functional special education program, so we wanted to find a way to be able to incorporate those things for them as well. So we also have parts that they can roll up to in our Ninja Warrior course that we added. So I'm really excited about that part. I love to see kids active and healthy, leading healthy lifestyles, so I think this will really be a great addition to that. But it has been a struggle with not a lot of play structures out there. There's a lot more student issues during that time, but that's okay. So again, another challenge. We did go remote for 3 weeks, and I have 6 teachers that have been remote all year. So with that brings some challenges, but as you can see, Miss Fritz here, she's just rocking it from the get-go. She's been amazing, again, serving several different buildings throughout our district. Mrs. Cooper down there with our kindergartners, we're still doing art and we're still doing crafts and all that rich learning, even though it's through a computer screen. And the Mars rover, what a wonderful field trip and experience that we likely would not have had if it wouldn't have been for COVID, because that probably would not have been streamed. So even though it was a challenge, we have found ways to turn this extremely challenging time into some wonderful, rich learning opportunities. And then the last slide that I have for you tonight is just kind of an update on our KISA goals. We're looking at ways to effectively use our data to drive our instruction at Tanglewood. One wonderful asset to that has been an addition of an instructional coach in our building, which has allowed somebody else besides me to really dig into data, and that has been so extremely helpful. That person, I've had 2 people in that role, Sherry Reed and Stacy Canfield, have been immense help to our staff in being able to find resources and explicit instruction ideas of how to reach some of our struggling kiddos, as well as to extend our high flyers. And then our next one is just digging into our technology. And wow, what a blessing COVID has been for that. You know, since I've been here in Derby, that's been one of our big goals, is to increase our technology use, because we had a lot of it that was really just sitting around at Tanglewood. So this has really upped our game, and boy, we just flew through our KISA goals this year. Our action steps were like done in August, so we just kind of checked that off and just keep going on. Adding more action steps as we've gone throughout the year. And our last one is really just looking at digital citizenship. And Mrs. Kohler, who I will bring up in a little bit, has been very integral in that through our computer lab, teaching digital citizenship lessons at least once a month with each of our grade levels through Common Sense Media that we have utilized for the last couple of years here in the district. So lots of things have been a big challenge for us at Tanglewood, our district, state, and our country. But at the end of the day, we have an amazing staff that continues to show up day in and day out for the students and families at Tanglewood, and we've really turned a lot of these challenges into wonderful experiences that they would have never gotten had something like this not happened to them. We really have made lemonade out of some really rotten lemons. So very proud of my staff and my students and my families and our district for continuing to provide what our teachers need to give their best to our families. So we'll stand for any questions.
Does anybody have any questions? Comments?
Okay, then I will move on to years of service then. So the first lady, what a great night to be able to celebrate all these fabulous ladies being International Women's Day today. So we had a few that weren't able to be here with us this evening, but for those that are here, our first one is Tracy Kohler, and she teaches our computer lab class. Come on up. But not only does she teach our tech classes and provides that support to our teachers, but she also, she's done it all in our building. She's been the testing coordinator. She fills in the office. She fills in classrooms, recess, lunch, you name it. This lady has done it. And I will say, if there was an award for the best bulletin board maker on earth, it would be hers. She makes the absolute most amazing birthday bulletin boards so that all of our students can have that celebration and they see something so very special in our hallway. So for 15 years, I hope it's 15 more, but thank you so much for your service, Tracy. And next up tonight is Mrs. Rhonda Dunn. Rhonda has been in our Interrelated Services program for a number of years, but something very interesting is she's only one half of the dynamic Dunn duo at Tanglewood. Her son David is a teacher in our building as well, but Rhonda is the sweetest human being I have probably ever met in my life. She is a person that seeks to be kind to everyone that she encounters. She's a very positive person, and she absolutely goes out of her way to serve the students that she works with. And even if it's a student that is not directly on her caseload, she is a grandma to all. And we absolutely love just her sweet, sweet soul. And Rhonda has been a part of Tanglewood much longer than 15 years because her children went to Tanglewood and she was a Tanglewood parent. So once a tiger, always a tiger. She has not left us. So Rhonda, I am so thankful that you are on our staff, and our students are beyond lucky to get to see your smiling mask face in the hallway. So thank you. Next up, I have Tammy Salmons. Tammy is another half of a great duo at Tanglewood. Her daughter, Tiffany, is a kindergarten teacher at Tanglewood as well. So this just speaks volumes about Tanglewood because once they show up, they just don't leave, which is really great. But Tammy is actually in a new role for us this year. She has joined Rhonda in the Interrelated Services room. So it's a little bit of a different role, but she is thriving, as we all knew she would. No matter what setting Tammy is in, she does an amazing job. She works very hard for the students that she works with on a daily basis. But the other thing that I absolutely love about Tammy is the fact that no matter what's going on, she always has a smile and she always has something positive to say. The only thing that I've ever heard her kind of even say anything about was she used to hold a 4x1 track record back in the day, and it was broken by her daughter's 4x1 team. So lots of good genes there, and I think it's such a special place that people come and they can start there as parents, and then they come on as teachers and paras to be able to support and keep that family vibe going, and this is a prime example of that. So thank you very much, Tammy. 20 years. And last, but certainly not least, Miss Margie Schieber. She is celebrating 30 fabulous years at Tanglewood. And honestly, like right here is a special, special person for more reasons than any of us have time to talk about. Mainly because she puts up with me every day, so you have to be special to do that. But she is the perfect person to have by your side, no matter what's going on throughout the day. She handles so much on a daily basis, from kiddos to parents, to teachers, to vending machines. I mean, you name it, she just takes care of it. And a lot of times I don't even know that these things are happening because she's so great at her job. She's our biggest cheerleader at Tanglewood, and she has the best ear for listening. And she's a person that I truly feel blessed to have a part of my life, to be able to call a coworker and a friend. Thank you, Margie. That is awful. Do I take those? Yeah, I think so. Thank you. I exit out of this.
All right, next up, under routine action, is the approval of minutes from February 22nd. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
got a motion and a second to approve those minutes. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, 7-0, approved. Next item after that is citizens' community presentations before the board, and DNEA will be first up with, I believe, Joel Addis.
Good evening. Joel Addis, special education teacher at El Paso Elementary and president of DNEA. You know, I think it goes without saying that a lot of educators volunteer their time for things related to their work outside of their school day. And for so many of them, they do that because they truly believe that it directly benefits their children's education. And so this happens at the building level, at the district level, and of course also at the association level. And so beginning kind of in this month, DNEA will be conducting elections for some of those positions. And at the building level, those are typically building leadership teams and superintendent's advisory council representatives. At the district level, you're looking at things like the professional development council. And then on a association level, we're also conducting elections for our executive committee and one position on our sick leave bank. And so really short tonight, the last thing I just would like to do is acknowledge that the building reps are really the ones who will do the lion's share of this work, and I just would like to thank them for that. So with that, I would thank you and stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Joel.
Thank you.
All right, next up is patrons, and I don't believe we have anybody signed up tonight. So we will move on to the consent agenda, which is item 5. And we've got several items under there. I'll read those briefly here. 5A is Parents as Teachers Assurances 2021 through 2022. 5B is Driver's Education. 5C is Donation to Derby Public Schools from Click for Heat. 5D is transportation remediation change order. E is certified and classified personnel reports, and F is claims. I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, 7-0, it's approved. Following that is reports, and first up is the gating committee update with Heather Bohati.
Update. From our last meeting, we continue to operate from our last meeting in yellow, and that means we are in person, as you're aware, for a K through 12. With that being said, too, since we have seen some stability, we know there may be some discussion about what that may look like for continued meetings further tonight. The next one is giving you an update regarding the vaccine clinic. Happy to report that we had an outstanding, if you want to say, vaccine clinic that we operated here. I think the ease of people coming in and getting the vaccine, people were in and out in a quicker time frame than we anticipated. I appreciate there's many people that worked to make that possible. I know Nikki Seeley was a very integral part, but there were many individuals that looked and helped to make this happen. We served 569 staff members to get their first dose of the vaccine. And then we did have a few staff members that came after and contacted Nikki to say, hey, is there any way I can get the vaccine? And those were sent over, and Derby Drug was willing to accommodate. So there were 6 additional individuals that were in that situation that were referred over. And as you're aware, Sedgwick County has opened up, so outside of that, educators can now sign up on the Sedgwick County website, and there's different times and places available. So if people didn't get in and would like to get in, they can do that. We do have dates coming up that we will be providing second doses to those people that ended up getting their first dose here. So there is March 17th that is coming up, and then we have that following Monday, the 22nd. So we have some times and dates. And signups, people have been signing up and getting on, so they can pick between those 2 dates to get the second vaccination. But again, very pleased with how that, and I'm glad we were able to secure vaccines and be able to make that happen. In addition to that, now that we're starting to see vaccines, we also are seeing with our numbers, our district leadership team has spent some time and started to say, are there things here in the district that we can start looking at and safely start trying to bring some changes here to the district and start moving to what we once remember, what was it, a little over a year ago. Started seeing it's about a year ago that all these changes started to occur. So some things wanted to bring before you, and there's a few things we would ask for approval tonight. So the first one is looking at with lunch visitors was talked about. And I'll kind of mention the things we talked about so you know and kind of where we're at. At this point, we're looking at holding off on lunch visitors. Part of that is that they would be unmasked at this point and having people come in. So that's something maybe we would relook at in the future, but at this point, saying not at this time. Guest speakers is an area that we're saying after spring break with administrator notification that we would allow guest speakers into the buildings to start presenting. Right now, as you've seen from the previous presentation, we've done a lot of virtual field trips. They could still do those, but if we want someone to come in, that we would propose to go ahead and start allowing that after spring break. The next one is looking at before and after school volunteers. So not during the school day, but looking at before and after school volunteers that we would start allowing before and after school volunteers. Limiting our numbers to 20 is what we talked about, or less, based on space and social distancing. So there's some parent groups that may be, getting some things together, setting up for something, that they could come in and do that after those hours. We did have discussion about during the hours, and we said we need to take some baby steps now. And the group felt that at this point, because a lot of those other volunteers would work in very close proximity to each other, that we need to take baby steps and maybe revisit that at a later time. Next one with parents. Right now, parents are not able to come in to offices with the exception of Derby High School. We're looking at parents being able to come in to limited areas and to be able to come into offices. This would be after spring break to do paperwork, come in for check-in and check-out procedures. That's what we're looking at. The next one's PTO and site councils. Those are generally smaller groups of individuals and feel that social distancing could occur. Again, it's after hours and saying that PTO and site councils could, if they would like to come on site after spring break to start holding meetings in the building. We also looked at music concerts. Music concerts, you'll see secondary, yes, we would say. And it was unanimous at elementary to finish the year with no music concerts. Due to spacing, social distancing, those types of things, administrators felt strong about that. On this one, kindergarten and fifth grade, with graduation and field trip, those types of things. So kind of looking at that graduation piece, we're going to revisit that after spring break. Field trips, we talked about field trips on a limited basis, looking at either on-site, doing something, going to another district facility, so it's staying in district, not taking long trips, not far trips, or going to a park at this point. So not taking basically kids anywhere else like exploration place, zoo, those types of things where you can interact with others or need other adults coming in that we talked about, but actually being able to start to ease up a little bit. We know we don't have a lot of time left, but if there was an elementary that said, hey, I'd like to go out to Derby North to see their fitness area and have that space to be able to do something, that somebody could get on the bus and could go out to take a field trip out there. And then also athletic end of the season, basically athletic meetings or end of the season meetings was discussed, and saying that those would be okay to start doing, and we would end of the season revisit after spring break how when we talk about that, banquets, those types of things would be handled at those levels. So lots of discussion, lots of thought into that. Happy to answer any questions regarding that. But a couple things, out-of-state travels, one I'd request that consideration is given that we would start allowing out-of-state travel starting in April. So we will request your approval. And then wanted to see if there's anything else that you would like to discuss tonight, or for me to answer any questions.
Sorry, go ahead.
So with the field trips, would that include, say, fifth grade, getting to go to the middle school to have a tour and those kind of things? Are we planning for that?
So we did talk about that, and right now the fifth grade and eighth grade, the principals agreed that at this point we would leave those Zoom,
Okay,
is where they felt at this point.
okay. I personally think that we're getting to a point where we can start moving in this direction, so I would be in favor of the proposals that you're making. One of the other things that I was wondering about, and I'm on the gating committee, I appreciate the updates that you give every 2 weeks for those gating committees. But I would propose that we make that change, that our decisions would last for 4 weeks instead of every 2 weeks.
Okay.
And then that would just have our next gating committee meeting would be on March 17th.
Okay.
And that would go for 4 weeks, and then the final one would be on April 14th. And then that would go until the end of the year.
Okay. Okay. So that definitely could be something. We just need to have this group approve that, and then we would make sure the gating committee is aware of that. And we've been pretty, I mean, based on, and there's some of you you're one of those that serve on that committee. It's been pretty smooth the last several meetings with that, and our numbers are starting to really level out and go down, is what we're seeing. So
So I guess can I make that motion right now?
Yes.
Okay, I would go ahead.
One quick question. So is the 17th spring break
17th is spring break.
and you're having the gating meeting that week?
We are right
Okay,
now.
well, just making sure, so, okay, that's fine.
All right, so I would make that motion that we have the gating committee meetings on March 17th and April 14th to last for 4 weeks instead of 2 weeks.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, so we've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or questions? Tina, go ahead.
I would be okay with it spacing. The only caveat I have is that we don't change the way that we do the gating committees. I myself am also on the gating committee. I think it is working smoother than it was at the very beginning, for sure. I don't, for transparency, I think we need to keep it the same as far as how the meetings are conducted. My only caveat to making it last for longer would be that if, as always, if we needed to shut down for some weird reason, we had a huge spike or something, that we reserve that right.
And I think that would definitely be the intent if ever we had a certain building, much like we did, you remember Cooper, that we did need to make a move to make an adjustment at that building.
And maybe adjustment is a better word, not shut
Okay.
down. I'm not saying we're going to shut our schools down, but that we have the ability to make an adjustment if we need to.
Yeah,
Good
so
idea.
I can amend that motion to say that we would have that flexibility if we needed to.
I'll second that.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's somewhat assumed. I mean, that's kind of been how we've established it all along. If something happened, Heather could even step in between meetings. But yeah, no, I think that makes sense. So we've got a first and a second. Any other discussion based on those additional comments, input from Tina? Okay.
And I agree it is assumed, but I still want to put it out there.
Right.
So it's transparent out there.
Yeah, so and correct me if I'm wrong, Robin, but the motion would be to continue with the gating committee meeting for March 17th. The next meeting would then be April 14th. So it would remove the meeting that was between those two. And then also with the understanding that we could have an additional gating committee meeting, or Heather could step in and make changes should something arise. It's an emergency. Fair enough? Yeah, okay. I would just say, I think the last month or so, things have looked really good. Looking at the metrics, I mean, we would have typically had a gating committee meeting, Wednesday? This is a little bit longer time frame, I think, with spring break.
Spring break.
That we've had. But I think the positive percent rate is down and quite a bit. So anyways, I would feel comfortable personally looking at it again the next week, and it doesn't look like things will drastically change, but we don't know for sure. So anyways, with that said, let's take a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand of the motion. Okay, 7-0, it's approved.
The other item was to request approval about out-of-state travel starting in April, if that's acceptable. I will also mention on a lot of these too, we wanted to bring you the full list of things. We've talked about a lot and time was spent with the principals. We realize in the district, and there's probably people viewing here, you have individuals that are probably going to be really nervous with letting off anything. So we realize that when you have 1,200 employees in a district. We also know there's people over here that are ready, like, hey, let's get these masks. We're getting people vaccinated out here. The principals and district leadership team really tried to work and talk about it, this whole group that's in here, and to strike a balance with things to make sure we're starting to move, but we're not moving, we feel, too fast with that. So I think that's important to know. We feel comfortable with making the recommendation on out-of-state travel. It's another step. With that, people are getting to choose if we want to do it. But some of these I know may be like, why aren't we doing this? There was much thought and discussion on that, and at this point we feel that we need to monitor, give it till after spring break, see what happens. We're going to revisit, and at this next gating meeting, I'll provide you updates as we bring other things forward. So that's kind of, did want to put that piece in there too. So we'd ask if you'd consider the out-of-state travel starting in April.
Justin, go ahead.
Okay, quick question on that, kind of along with what you had said. Who's the travel for, and where would they be heading to? Is it like a staff thing, is it a student thing?
It would be a staff out-of-state travel thing. All student things that are out-of-state come to the board individually for you to approve.
Okay, I guess, kind of like what Robert said earlier, I would like to see the 5th and 8th grade as well, tours in person as opposed to Zoom. If we can, on one hand, let people travel, which I'm perfectly fine with. I mean, there's lots of exposure there. I think sending our 5th graders, 8th graders to this high school, middle school, a whole different world for them in person and walk these halls would probably be good if we can figure out a way to make that happen. So I know you said, that was probably talked about a lot, but I feel like those are.
That's stuff that the middle school principals and work with the high school and elementary, and I'm happy, I know Holly has visits, but they all felt very strongly at this point, just with, and also with timing, and they've put a lot of effort into what the presentation and things is gonna be, that this is where we're at this year, but I'll have you speak to that. And I don't have any middle school or high school there, so I'd never recommend without having their feeling to make any change to that.
Yeah, so this has been on our agenda for the last two secondary administrator check-ins to discuss and plan the spring visits for 5th grade as they're graduating to 6th grade, and 8th graders as they're graduating to 9th grade. And so the principals express just a little bit of concern about having the students come to the building with the other students that they have there, and maintaining, you know, some of the spacing and activities that they had there in their building. And so I think as they were discussing that, they thought that and felt like there were a lot of components that they could bring in. They could talk to other kids. They've had Mr. Mobley come and do a video tour that the different administrators are leading them on. And so they're attempting to do it virtually. But I will second what Heather says, is they expressed quite a preference for it to maintain virtually, the tour for the 5th and 8th graders.
I would also say with that, you know, we're coming off an interesting year. The calendar later you'll approve, but you'll see on there's back to school night. So the point is to get kids in the building and to be able to see it and to tour, and that they'll still have that opportunity to be able to do that at the beginning of the year as outlined on the calendar is what we're looking at. I mean, unless something drastically changes before then. So that is a preference of middle school and high school administration at this point, to keep it Zoom.
Any other questions? I've got just a couple. So you had mentioned before and after school volunteers limited to 20, so that's a group of people coming in and after school, and they have no more than 20 people meeting in one room? Is that how it works? Or is
Yeah,
it
that is what they talked about. They kind of talked about what does the space look like. The administrators also talked, what does it look like elementary, middle school, and high school? Do we need to adjust that number? Because there obviously is more space at certain. And they also said, what is it usually the amount of people we have at one time? And they felt that was very accommodating for what, you know what I mean, what was needed and what they could expect right now between now and the end of the, you know what I mean, end of the year is what they're looking. If we ever said, again, this is something we're going to revisit, this is that first step. I know we're excited, you know what I mean, about it. This is kind of that first step, and that's what the group felt comfortable with at this point.
Okay. Only other question I had was, you had mentioned graduation. Was that graduation as in high school or graduations for like 5th graders, 8th graders?
So this is like kindergarten, we
Gotcha.
have graduation, 5th grade. More information will be coming with, right now, graduation at this point is still being planned. More information will come, but at Coke Arena with the date we already have out there. So,
Okay.
but more information will come. Part of that is dependent on, again, health department guidelines, what we can have. But we're planning right now on an in-person graduation unless something changes.
Okay.
But those graduations were kindergarten, fifth grade. There's some schools that plan little ceremonies and get-togethers and those types of things for kids. And we said we'll revisit that as time goes on.
And I assume we as a board would have the option to revisit some of these items, future meetings. I mean,
I can definitely give
Our
updates.
dating updates, if there's other things that we think may need to be updated, we could do that. Because we're kind of looking ahead for 2 months right now
Right.
with your recommendations. Okay. Okay, any other questions, comments? Go ahead.
So, quick follow-up to what we just said, just for clarification. On the question I'd asked for the 5th and 8th grade tours, now, is that something we'd even have to approve at our level? I mean, if you guys decide things look okay, I want to take the 5th grade, some of them to middle school, do we have to get involved with that, or can you just do that?
We usually just handle these items. So the one I'm making, the thing that was changed is the out-of-state travel.
Okay.
With travel, so you had changed it and the board approved it, so we're asking to change it back. These, if there's any changes, providing the updates. Now, always as a board, I will tell you, always boards have the ultimate. So if you said there was something on this list, I'll just say PTOs and site councils. Well, that's when we're doing, and you said, no, we're not ready for PTOs and site councils. You could vote and say, no, you can't bring any PTOs and site councils in. Boards remain that right. However, these, since they're operational, we're not going to bring each one for approval, the administrators, but I'm going to provide you updates to answer the question.
That's good, because I guess my concern was that, I wouldn't want to force anyone to take these, kids on a field trip or two, but I would like that to be an option. Like, without them to come back to us and ask. So if it required our approval, I'd like to be in our motion that they have the freedom if they want to do that, and it's available, then let's do it.
Yep.
Without having to ask the board again. But if it's already available, then
It's available. We as a group talked about it. We're trying to norm, because what we also don't want is when you have this going on, because buildings see that. I'm looking back into groups that, whether it's teachers, certified, classified. If one building over here is going to Exploration Place and doing all this, and this building's closed down, that's where, as leadership team, we're having conversations, but we're also trying to keep you updated on kind of where we're moving with it. So that way, if you do hear something you're like concerned about, you can chime in.
So do we need to add that item to the action?
The one we need for action, if you're okay with it, because we need to reverse that, is the out-of-state travel starting in April, if you're willing to do that.
I'll move that we approve that.
Do we need to do the motion here or?
It's under report, you can
You can do it under reports, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Then I'll second it.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to allow out-of-state travel beginning in April.
Correct.
Right? Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor, raise your hand. Okay,
Thank you very much.
7-0? Yep, okay, 7-0.
Pleased to
Thanks.
be able to be at the point to start bringing some of these to you.
Okay.
Yep.
Next up, under 6B, is legislative update with John Regier.
Hey, good evening, John Regier, Director of Finance. The 2021 legislative session for Kansas, as well as the federal level, has kicked off, and tonight we're going to go over a few of the bills locally and statewide that we were watching. Just going to go over a few of them, and then I can answer any questions through there. One of the big ones that keep an eye on is substitute for House Bill 2119. This one has a little bit of everything in it: funding for the next 2 years, the extension of the 20 mil general fund levy, which has to be done every 2 years. It also has education savings accounts for kids who are considered at risk or free and reduced to be able to take the per pupil state aid to a private school institution or get private tutoring. It also has amending the school term law that if a school district goes into remote learning for more than 40 days, every kid that is in the remote learning turns into a virtual state aid, which is a flat $5,000 base state aid instead of base state aid plus weightings. So any kid that is at risk would not get that any longer. As well as it does need to find additional $10 million in federal funds to fund a mental health and safety and security grants. Also inside of this is a recommendation from the legislature to give all classroom teachers a $500 bonus, but no other information is noted on there. It's 30 pages worth of information. There's some of the highlights in there. Next one is House Bill 2240. That one drops off Fort Leavenworth from the bond and interest state aid calculation. This was one that we talked about last year, but due to COVID, the legislative session did get ended early. This would increase state aid for any bonds that passed this year because Fort Leavenworth does not have the ability to pass bonds, and their assessed valuation is the lowest in the state because they are all, well, majority of their district is on side of a base, which is tax exempt. So that drops off of there. The other one we're watching is House Bill 2039, which requires students to pass a 60-question civics test before graduation. They can take it anytime between 7th grade and 12th grade. They can also take 20 questions off the citizenship test to help fund that. The last one is at-risk funding. The legislature is looking at a couple bills to continue on high-density at-risk funding, as well as looking at how at-risk funding as a whole works well with our students and how we use those funds. So a couple bills in there that touch base on that. With that, I will stand for any questions.
Pretty exciting stuff.
It's riveting stuff.
Matthew, go ahead.
So on that first bill, the state legislature basically wants to have us have local control until 40 days, and then they're gonna edict that they're gonna take away funding from us, is basically what they're doing.
Correct.
And if we were to have another pandemic, is there any language in that bill that would reverse that, or are we just screwed?
I would believe it's up to their discretion at that point in time.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Oh, go ahead, Ron.
So are the students that are virtual now, are they at a flat $5,000, or are they considered full-time students here in Georgia?
So if they're considered virtual, they are the flat 5,000, but we also have those remote learners, which right now they're funded like a student that is inside of our building. So they get the base state aid plus any weighting. So we have both of those in our district right now. They are either full-time virtual or remote, which get our base state aid, which it's about as clear as mud, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay.
You asked that. So the bill says virtual, but if they're labeled as remote, where the parents are deciding, does that make a difference, or are they all lumped in the same bucket per this bill?
So we go into a remote session, or if we go into remote learning like we can be, if any kid that is in there, which would be anybody that either chose remote or went into remote because we had a COVID outbreak or whatnot, would then turn into virtual state aid, which is the flat 5,000.
And is that retroactive, or from when the bill passes, that 40-day clock starts?
That would be from when the bill passes going forward, anytime a pandemic
Okay.
comes into session.
So
Not,
this year's funding's probably okay?
this year's funding is good, it's anytime in the future.
Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better. All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we're good, John.
Perfect.
Um,
You get to see me again,
Yeah,
so.
you're not going anywhere.
No,
so
I'm
you
not.
must be- Okay. Next up is finance report.
All right. Another riveting report here in the finance report. Couple updates, what we've been working on this year. Payroll and benefits. We brought the benefit partner RFP a few times to the board to discussion action. We have received 8 proposals for a benefit partner RFP. We had a couple long meetings with our internal staff as well as the benefits committee, and we have chosen 3 finalists. We will do an interview session the third week of March, having a time to get some question and answers done, as well as get some more information from there. From there, we will meet as a benefits committee and then bring a recommendation to the Board of Education to move forward with a new benefits partner. That has taken up quite a bit of time. The 8 proposals were quite extensive. I think one of them was about 200 pages, so working through each one of those, making sure we select a partner going forward is very key there. The next item in our budget finance area, with the influx of new federal dollars, creates more additional work for our side. tracking those dollars, making sure we're spending them correctly, as well as the reports that are required, whether it was CARES funding, the Sedgwick County Spark, or our broadband grant. With the passing of the COVID relief bill in December, that does give us additional dollars that we will have to continue to track and move forward with. So we have been working pretty hard on that. The final thing is our impact aid. We are federally impacted aid with McConnell Air Force Base. We do give out a survey every single year to all of our students. In the past, that has always been via paper. So we are going forward with the pilot program to be able to do that via Skyward, so that we do not have to count 7,000 forms every single year. So how that looks is we've applied, the application has been approved. We will walk through it with the Federal Impact Aid Office here at the end of March. If they do approve our walkthrough, we'll be able to do a pilot program for next year, which we do our survey right around count day, which is September 20th. Next year, we'll have to do it by paper as well as online to compare the differences. If we get more kids that fill out the online, we'll show that that is a worthwhile process, and we'll be able to just do the online survey going forward. Something that we've been talking about doing for quite some time, and happy to report that that is moving on down the road. So with that, I will stand for any questions from the finance report.
Any questions, comments? Go ahead, Robin.
So is there a way that you can tie that into enrollment, that the parents with financial aid could do that during enrollment time?
Yes, it is a custom form inside of enrollment. As they're enrolling, they will fill out the paperwork, and then on count day, we will send back another form out to say, hey, certify that this information is still correct. They'll certify it, and then we'll be done from there.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
and Pearl in the curriculum office has been pivotal in this, creating a custom form for us that approves to the Federal Impact Aid Office standards. So, appreciate her help.
Any other questions or comments for John? Okay. John, I've got a couple questions for you. On the insurance process, so you mentioned you're down to 3?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Will we as a board get to see some of the detail of those 3, or maybe final 2, or are you just gonna bring one and say this is the final product? Or just trying to think through what that process looks like, because I think it's a really big thing for me personally, but I'm guessing there's others here at the table that think it's big too. And so just wondering what visibility we'll get before the final product. I know we've got a committee, and I know it sounds like they've done a lot and they're doing a lot, which I really appreciate. I think conversation as a board might be helpful too. But wanted to get your thoughts if that.
Be happy to share the original proposals that they sent to us for the 3 finalists, as well as any further proposals or any question and answer sessions. We can bring all of that prior to the night that we bring the recommendation, or we can bring it a little bit beforehand to show where we've been and where we've been going. So however that works for you guys, be happy to do whatever, but anything that we've received would be happy to share out. Anything that we've given back that has any private information on, I will not be able to share, but anything that's public knowledge, would be happy to share out with anybody on the board at this point.
Okay.
So.
Are there any other thoughts from other board members?
Well,
Go ahead.
I am on that committee, and so I know it seems like in about 2 weeks, we're having 3 presentations, one day after another, I think 3 days in a row. And so, I don't know, I think the process so far has been very good as far as, there are 8 people and they narrowed it down to 3, so.
Okay.
Yeah, appreciate that. Feel the same way. I mean, there's one Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, an hour and a half or 2 hours each. We'll go over each proposal, and then I'm sure we'll meet again to discuss which one we would recommend to the board. But, yeah.
Gotcha. And we currently, you 2 are the board members, right, on the committee, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And I guess some of my questions would be, because I know we've had, I don't know, but I think we've had maybe some there might be some structure changes or different ideas. I'd be interested to know how we're looking at that and how maybe those final three are looking at that. You know what I mean, as far as maybe different plans or whether, you know, all the different options that we have, and I guess how the committee is looking at that as well. I'd be interested to know that. So if it is just bringing a final one, maybe it's saying, here's why, here's maybe the other two that we were looking at and why we didn't choose those, or
Yeah.
something like that would be helpful, I think.
Would be happy to go through kind of we did a ranking process when we narrowed it down to the three. Certain milestones created certain points. And so that's how we narrowed it down to the three. There were three front runners in the whole thing, as we discussed during our long meeting about it. But then when we do bring back the final, I can bring back all three finalists, kind of what their ideas were, where they were going, whether it would be self-funded or fully funded, and then why this one rose to the top from the three, and that's why we're bringing it as a recommendation.
Okay.
So be happy to do that,
Yeah,
as well as any other backup information that you guys would be happy to or want to see, bring that too.
Okay.
So.
No, that sounds good to me. That works for everybody else, so. Okay, my other question was, as far as the federal dollars, you had mentioned the compliance of those things and there's a process to that. In the industry I'm in, we have to do a lot of that as well, and the rules kind of change as they go sometimes. So I assume we've got some folks that are helping advise us on that as far as staying in compliance, whether that's KSP or auditors or others, or how do we stay on top of that?
So at this,
I understand the challenge.
there are definitely challenges. At this point, we haven't been advised to exactly, the only thing that we've been advised on is how to spend the dollars and then how to track them. So we've been following those rules, and that's either come from the federal, from KSDE through the CARES Act, or from Sedgwick County for the money that they gave to us. At this point, I did reach out to our auditors and note that, hey, you know, what other items are you gonna need from us? And they are still waiting to get their requirements on how they're going to audit it before they'll send it to us. So once they know, they will send it to us and say, hey, these are the ways that you have to keep it in track and move forward with it. But with everything that we purchase, it's all in Skyward. We scan every invoice in. There's a paper trail for all purchase orders that come through. All checks have 3 signatures, all the main requirements. So we feel we're in compliance at this point. And then if anything does change from the auditors, if they need anything additional, they will be sure to let us know. And I have actually asked our auditors that when they do get the information, that if they need a district to do a test run on, pick us. Because we'd be happy to do it. We feel that we're in a good spot, that we have everything in line, ready to roll. So we want to be the first ones to be tested out on, so.
Thank you, appreciate that. It sounds like you're on top of it, John. Any other questions or comments, John? You good?
I'm good.
Okay,
If
all
you're-
right.
If you're done with me, so.
I'm done with you. We're done with you, it looks
Thank you.
like. So let's move on to item 6D, the technology report with Dennis Elledge.
Good evening, Dennis Elledge, Director of Technology, and I have this big, beautiful podium and screen in front of me, and yet I brought my notes on my iPad. I'll get used to it eventually. And my report's in the packet. In the report, you've got updates on our larger projects, including our capital refreshes that we have going on this summer, as well as the ongoing bond projects. We also have updates on our continuing efforts to support the Return to Learn project, as well as updates on trends in damage and network connectivity. A few things I wanted to kind of just highlight and go over. First of all, on the display refresh, just wanted to mention that all indications at this point is that we may go over budget for what we had planned and budgeted last year due to increasing costs caused by a worldwide chip shortage, unanticipated installation challenges with cabling, power, and construction that we had not planned for. But we will make sure to address this in next year's capital outlay plan, and we'll provide the board with updates and options as we work through the process on that. Also on the device damage, we continue to see the damage ticking up on the devices right now, which is expected given that we have more than twice as many devices going home now than we did before the pandemic had started. And the devices are staying home for longer periods of time, especially during those remote learning times. We're encouraged that as we continue our refresh cycles and acquire new devices with the warranty and insurance coverage, that the costs long-term will continue to trend downward and eventually become next to nothing. We'll still have device damage for smaller things and staff devices, but overall, we're very hopeful that this trend will reverse course once this gets, once the pandemic slows down and once we get more devices covered. On the good news front, the network reconfiguration project, I am happy to report that that project has been completed. As you recall or may recall, we started that back in December. We worked with a local company, Converge One, to come in and actually do a network audit of our wireless and wired networks. And they identified several areas for improvement, and we brought them in and engaged their services to work on those. And we were able to more than double the available bandwidth that we see available at the end devices that the students are using in the classroom, which has all but basically taken away the need for us to prioritize device testing in the testing window. So we are now happy to report that the state testing window should be a very smooth thing, and students should be able to test whenever it's convenient for the teachers to conduct that testing. So we're very happy with the results of that project. And just wanted to mention, I know there was a bit of talk about the state level stuff, but at the federal level, the stimulus package includes the E-rate Emergency Connectivity Fund. I'm not sure if you've been keeping up with this, but it is basically $7 billion that will be allocated to low-income families to augment their costs for acquiring broadband connectivity at home so that they can be connected to the internet for schooling. Right now, it's if it passes, the FCC will have 60 days to come up with an actual program and communicate that program and how to apply out to the different districts. Once we have additional information on how to apply, we'll make sure to bring that information and provide it to our families so that we can assist them in getting any assistance that's available to them to help them get and stay connected. And with that, I'll answer any questions you might have.
Tina, go ahead.
First of all, with the Cooper and Oakland rebuild, I see in here that it says that we're working with them to make sure that all the technology out there is in line with our new standard,
Yes.
which was developed when we were looking at the new builds, specifically more towards Stone Creek, I think. So what assurances do we, I mean, I assume that these are going to be comparable to Stone Creek when we say equity, that they're going to have like technology in these buildings, and we are setting them up since we are building them for, 40 years down the road, that we are setting them up to be just as equal as what we have done at some of the other buildings.
Yes, that is correct. We are working with the audio-video engineering firm, KCAV, on a lot of that technology, but also working with Converge One and just within ourselves, developing that standard to apply equally across the board to all schools, so that as we do rebuilds like Cooper and Oaklawn, we use this standard to identify exactly how to get the cabling and the infrastructure and everything else in place to match what we've done at Stone Creek. That standard was developed, of course, during the Stone Creek timeframe, but it was also developed because we knew at that time we were planning a refresh of printers, a refresh of staff devices, a refresh of display technology. So we wanted to make sure that we developed a standard that applied to all technology across the board. And there are components that apply to new construction and components that apply to the capital refreshes. But as long as we continue to care and feed for this standard, future refreshes should become much easier and far more simple in terms of planning and budgeting as well. So the equity should be there for all of the buildings.
And so are we on target with what we have budgeted? Are we way under, way over? Where are we at as far as?
We're on target for the infrastructure component, which is what's budgeted in this year. They had to do a little bit of shifting of some budget items in order to account for the accelerated time frame. The rest of it, of course, for the end device installation will be in the capital outlay plan for next year. But yes, we are on target right now.
A couple more questions. As far as the hotspots, how many do you have deployed that are still being used?
We have over 600 of those devices that are still deployed and out there. We got up to, at one point, I believe, close to 800 devices deployed. And at this point, we're starting to deactivate and bring devices back in since we've moved to a more in-person modality.
So that goes with my next question then. How many are we considering lost? How many did we plan for that? Was it always our plan that we were gonna get every single one of them back? Or do we have a certain plan in place? I guess my question is, how are we handling ones who are not returning them? Or how do we know that they're not still using them?
I guess the best way to answer that is we did anticipate loss and we built it into the program. So the devices themselves, we got for free. So there was no charge for the hardware. The ongoing pay for service is something that we can turn on and off without having the device in our possession. So as we have schools tell us this family has relocated or this family has unenrolled from Derby Public Schools, we're able to go and deactivate those devices service immediately so that we're not paying for service for someone who isn't actively learning in the district. As to whether or not they're currently using it and they have it checked out, if they've selected remote learning and they're showing up in person and they're in the classroom, unless somebody tells us deactivate the device, those devices could still be activated or active. But as of right now, we're getting those reports directly from the curriculum department and working on them as they come in. We're also communicating with those families to let them know, now that you've moved to this modality, we will be disconnecting that so that it's not a shock to them when that happens.
Yep, so I would just add a little more to that along the lines of how we're tracking that. We have our list of remote and in-person students that are updated each quarter, and so we've worked with Kristen Regier's team as well as Joseph Moberly and Pearl to identify students when they change. And if they're a student that has come back in person, at this point, over the last week and a half or so, we've been calling the families using our remote cares team and requesting that they send them back in. And so our report has been that we've received quite a few hotspots back in schools and back in the office. There have been maybe 3 instances where the family has kind of emailed back and said, hey, we actually don't have internet at home, and we need the hotspot so that we can continue to do homework, those kinds of things. And so in some of those instances, we've kind of done some checking to see, do we have other evidence of hardship? And then in actually all 3 instances, we were able to see that and leave the devices on. But as Dennis said, just to reiterate, the way that Verizon contract is written, we never paid for the hotspots. That is actually free for us with the service that we have. And as part of our Kansas Economic Development and Connectivity Grant, that $1.78 million grant, a good portion of it was exactly to fund hotspots for our students and families who need them, who qualified because of economic or other hardship. So we actually, at this point, because we've been so conservative, still have some credit in reserve with Verizon so that we can continue to support our families who need them.
All right, my last question or comment is just mostly around device damage. I mean, we knew that it was going to go up, but when we say it's going up, are we doubling, tripling?
It's about double.
I mean, that's a concern, obviously. I know we had warranties that were offered, and probably not everybody took advantage of that, but it is concerning. And it's more concerning because I know for every one that probably gets turned in damaged, we have several that are not being turned in. And we'll all catch up, and I'm fearful that we're going to end up with a big rush even though there's not a lot we can do about it. But my concern is that as we go forward, there will be quite a few still to be turned in. And that ultimately it all affects in our bottom line, so.
Okay.
Go ahead, Matthew.
So, on these hotspots, and in combination with the money that most likely will be coming with the new funding, do you see these hotspots continuing in that capacity, or was that money that's in the new bill directed to a more permanent solution for providing an internet connection, or is it gonna be a combination thereof? Or is that, it's too early to know?
Yeah, at this point, we're still not sure what the qualifications are, so we're not sure how many of our families will qualify, and given the qualifications, how many will actually apply for the monies. So we may still have to have a combination of the hotspots provided by the district along with that incentive that they're provided at their level.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Yeah, Dennis, you have a lot of things in your report here, so I appreciate the information, and I just wanted to say that I really appreciate the survey that was sent out to staff for their device and for their refresh, and I think as much as teachers have grown with technology and learned so many things, that can be kind of, if they have a say in what device they're using, I think that's really important, so I appreciate that. Just wanted to say that.
Any others? One question for you, Dennis. And you may or may not know the answer to this, but I'll ask. Can we use CARES money to help cover the increase in damage, given that it's really a result of COVID and the impact?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
So
If
that's
we haven't
something.
looked at that, that might be a suggestion. We can track our trajectory and what damage we had in previous years, and here's the increase. So might be an idea. So.
We have outstanding information and record keeping on our device damage, so we should be able to identify everything that's due to the pandemic, including we never would have allowed the elementary level to take their devices home. So all of that damage should be covered, I would guess.
Yeah, as long as it works with John's compliance, folks.
Yeah.
All right, that's all I have. Okay, thank you, Dennis. All right, next up is item 6E, Strategic Plan Summary Report with Heather Bohati.
Throughout the year, we bring updates to you of the progress towards our strategies, and our committees have been meeting. Many of you serve on those committees too, but tonight we will have the chairs provide you an update since our last meeting of the progress that has taken place. We will also, before the end of this year, 2020-21 school year, we'll have another report to kind of finish off the remainder of those items. So tonight, starting with strategy 1, we have Katie Carlson.
Hello. Okay, well, I'm excited to give you guys an update on how we continue to enhance and improve our internal and external communication. The first area that I wanted to touch on just briefly is in the area of translations. You guys have a handout in front of you that is a Proprio language tool. And this was a recommendation from our subcommittee and our whole group that's really looking at the area of translations. And Proprio is a tool that staff has been trained on and is available to them. But the committee felt that having something that they could have a physical copy of that's condensed and that they could also bookmark and have accessible on their computer when they needed to pull it up and reference in a really simplified format would be really helpful for them. And they asked for this or recommended this ahead of conferences. So this was sent out by Kelly Kitterman to all certified staff last week. So we're hopeful that that tool will be helpful, but wanted to make sure that you guys had a copy of that. There's a bunch of other highlights in there, but I wanted to take a couple moments to highlight in the area of our multimedia. This is a new video series that we are doing to feature staff This committee has worked really hard to develop like the theme of this, what they wanted these videos to convey, and Litona has done a phenomenal job doing the video, doing the editing, the interviewing, and putting it together. And we launched our first video March 1st. Our goal is to have one of these on average every month or so, so we're hoping to get 2 more out this year, and we have some really great people in mind to feature. And really the goal of this video series is just to showcase all of our unique staff, because all of our staff and their stories and their traits about them are what lends to our students in their educational experience. So I'm going to take a couple moments to show this first video. Maybe. There.
I'm Malin Tetro. I'm the District Instructional Coordinator for English Language Arts, History, Art, and Music. It's a little less obvious than if your role is directly a teacher that are directly working with students, but as an instructional coordinator, you almost have a hand in so many different pots that really do affect student learning. One of my prime examples is how often we work with the instructional coaches at the elementary level. We're blessed now to have one in every building, and I feel like, talk about teaching teachers. The instructional coaches are basically like the microcosm teacher in their building as far as helping with curriculum. I've been all over the place. So I was born in California, and then I moved to Arizona in high school, and it was my 12th grade English teacher that I just thought was the bee's knees. She was a great teacher, and she sort of built her class around the idea that you get to know education better when you teach it as a student. And so it was one of the final projects our first semester that she had given me really good feedback about being a teacher, and that it was something that I was good at just based on the presentation that I did. Right, so I went to college at WSU because at the time, both of the previous Team USA coaches were the coaches at WSU, and so I was offered a scholarship to go there, and that's how I ended up in Kansas. Bowling. So I initially wanted a career in bowling, but again, I come from a family that's very goal-oriented and makes education a very important part of our cornerstone of our family. And so I knew that being an athlete for a living wasn't something that I wanted to bank on. When I coach students, like the high school students that I've coached before, and they want to be professional bowlers, I just tell them that have a backup plan, have another idea, because you never know what's going to happen, and you can't be an athlete forever. I'm proud of how tight-knit this community is and willing to help each other regardless of what building they're in, what role they play. Especially being a younger professional in this position, I feel like I lean really heavy on a lot of different people to answer questions, and just gain contextual factors about different levels, especially the elementary level, maybe early middle level that I haven't directly taught myself, but I really needed that background knowledge to be able to serve the people that I serve. And so what makes me very proud is that everyone is willing to help others. I'm Allie Tetro, the District Instructional Coordinator for the Humanities, and I am very proud.
So our goal with these videos is really to highlight a variety of different staff in 260 seconds or less. Kind of a play on words, but really you want to hold people's attention, but be able to have enough time to tell a story as well. So the committee has spent a lot of time developing a list of ideas and people that would be great to feature. We have a couple great ideas. I don't want to mention the names yet in case they don't pan out, but great ideas to finish up the year. One's in the area of instrumental music, which we felt is great, is because we're constantly listening to what other things are going on in the district and how it could benefit those things. Instrumental music is something curriculum has worked really hard to ramp up the efforts and recruitment for fifth graders, so we thought that that would be a really great tie-in to tell one of those stories. So that's something that we are working on next. So the videos had really great feedback so far. Our goal, we put it on the website, staff newsletter, and then in the e-news. Additionally, in the area of video and multimedia, Joseph Mobley still assists and does so much in this area as well. He is doing a lot of school building tours for kindergarten pre-enrollment, and I think Dr. Putnam's going to be doing a CTE pathway video. So between him and Litona, I really think we just have expanded our efforts so much in that area of multimedia, so I'm really excited about that. Another area I wanted to touch on was continuing our logo refresh and implementing the brand guidelines. I'm really excited that we will be coming to you guys by the end of the school year with both Derby Hills and El Paso's new logo to approve. So it's always fun to get these started. Each one has a different level of excitement to them. Derby Hills has been really interesting trying to figure out a dragon. But I always love to hear, like during Shannon's presentation, how much the schools begin to embrace them, how it's fun for the students and staff to be a part of the process. So it's been really great to see the schools participate in this, and I really like the process that we're doing with that. The last area that I wanted to mention, I won't go too far into it because I know that Heather mentioned it a little bit earlier with vaccines, but that was one of the safety highlights, is just the efforts that the district put into offering the vaccines for staff, and also just our efforts in COVID-19 resource and documents. They continue to be updated as quarantine guidance has changed. So there's a lot of people that work really hard in that area. So that's a really quick high-level overview of the communications. Do you have any questions for me?
Any questions, comments? Yeah, personally, I think the videos are great. So I think it's a neat idea to connect people, to our staff, and so kudos on the videos. I think those are cool. All right, I don't see any others. Thanks, Katie.
Okay. A lot of great work from the strategy. We're now ready for our strategy 2 with Holly.
Good evening. So for strategy 2, we are working and focusing on high school graduation rate, as well as some of the things such as our CTE pathways that support our graduation rate, as well as our K-5 career exploration activities. And so to that end, for career exploration at K-5 level, we've conducted a survey that we still have out for responses so that we can have different businesses come in and work with our schools as we're planning our social studies curriculum for next year. So we're excited about that. And then we also are working on strengthening our pathways, and along with that endeavor is this whole concept of letting students hear from other students about why they've chosen to take a series of classes in a particular pathway, what it interests them, that they've earned a credential, and how they think they might use it in their future. I always tell teachers that, we spend a lot of time working with and talking to our students, and they do listen to us. But a lot of times they will also listen with a little bit different level of intensity to their peers. And so this is kind of an effort to kind of do two things. To one, acknowledge students who have earned a CTE credential, or industry recognized credential, and then also to let their voice be heard about what attracted them to that class and what they hope and dream to do with the information and the credential that they've earned. So with that, I will give you just a quick 2-minute snippet of one of our high school students as he talks about his OSHA certificate. You'll hear on this video, we are in the hallways with the students at DHS. And so you'll hear a little bit of background noise, so we'll find a more isolated space the next go-round, but we did think that it was important to kind of try to catch them in classes that went along with their certification so that their peers could see that visual as well. So here we go.
Hey, my name is Brooks Crawford. I'm a senior at Derby High School, and I got certified. new. I got OSHA certified, and I knew I did a little bit on applications. I didn't know what career I wanted to go on at the time. I didn't know if I wanted to be a welder or just what. I mean, right now I want to be a mechanical engineer. I've been interested in that for a while. I knew OSHA certification would look good on that. And I don't know, it's something nice to do. Educates you on shop safety, a lot of stuff like that. So that's really nice. I'm not sure how I can do it. In engineering, I know shop safety is a really big priority. Hands-on meeting, but I would not work in the industry right now. Work on cars a lot. That's my job right now. And using it there is really nice. I mean, you do want to be safe, especially when you can't get hurt. I mean, there's minor things, but there are really major things too that you have to be really careful about. No, I can, but I mean, you can make jokes about OSHA certified and stuff like that, but I mean, everyone knows at the end of the day, you gotta be really smart and can't make stupid mistakes like that. So, OSHA certification really helps with that and teaches you what to do. No, it wasn't too much. I think we had like 3 months to do it, and I mean, you can cram it all in one weekend. You can just kind of do a couple of assignments every class. It's pretty easy. Yeah, I would, especially if you want to do any stuff in the shop. I know for most of the classes you have to be OSHA certified and have that certificate to do the work. And even depending on the line of work you're into, it's a requirement. So right now I'm looking at K-State and OSU. I'm a little bit more towards OSU.
Okay, and so then you see at the end just a little information about classes that they could take where they could get their OSHA certification. So again, just letting our students' voices kind of do some of the talking for us as we look to strengthen our CTE coursework and concentrators and really bring some relevance to student electives that they're earning as they're working towards graduation so they can see the real-world application. Okay, and so with that, I'll stand for any questions that you might have. Okay.
Thanks, Holly.
Holly? All right, next is strategy 3 with Becky.
All right, good evening. Becky Mader, Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources and Chair of Strategy 3. So the Strategy 3 Personnel Committee, we continue working on our goal of attracting and retaining and developing our team of staff who support our educational community. So the focus for this evening that I would like to touch on with you is the recruiting efforts that we have going on this spring. So we do have Derby Works out there with several different activities and things that our committee has brainstormed and planned. We do have scheduled interviews this week to target internal candidates within our district. So we did some interviews this afternoon. We have some more scheduled for Thursday morning and then also on Friday. And these interviews target student teachers in our district, also TAP students. So those are people who may be working in a classified position now, but working on their education degree and ready to accept a position. Also our floating subs that we have in place. This year, many of them have a teaching degree or maybe graduated in December and are looking for jobs. So our floating subs have come in for some of those. And then also people who are filling long-term sub positions. So I just want to tell you that today's interviews, this was just the first batch of them this week, but it was so exciting because these internal candidates, we have some true talent here. And it's just exciting because all of them, we talked about our hashtag Be the Why with almost all of them because they feel that pride that we have in our community and they know the partnerships and they can feel the strength of that. So it was really exciting to meet with them today. And then this will also help with our principals as they're filling the openings that are coming up in the district. We also have a showcase event planned for later this month, and that will be targeting external candidates. So we sent it out to everyone who's applied for a job in our district, and then we'll also be promoting it on social media and sharing that information. So during the showcase, we will be holding this via Zoom, but we'll start with a district overview. We'll talk about some of our bond projects even, some of the demographics within our district and the things that we have to offer. We'll also talk about benefits and the current positions that we have open. And then we will have DNEA speaking about how teachers in the district have a voice and how well we work together, and that kind of unique partnership that we have between DNEA and our administrators and our school board. So after that, we'll have Mark Statz, who's the president and CEO of the Derby Chamber of Commerce. He's also a Strategy 3 team member. So then he is going to share with them those unique partnerships that I was talking about that just happened to come up naturally in the interviews that we did today. So it will be great to have Mark there. We'll also have some other Strategy 3 members on hand to share with others the unique things that Derby schools have to offer. Then we'll break into smaller groups where those teaching candidates will have the opportunity to meet in kind of smaller groups with our administrators and our Strategy 3 members to have question and answer type sessions. So we're really excited to launch that. And then also Dawn Gresham, who's one of our assistant directors of special services, she serves on Strategy 3 as well, but she's also been working with someone from the Kansas Education Employment Board, so the project director there. They invited us to some recruiting incentives that Dawn and I sat in first as administrators, and then they held another session last week for teachers. So it's kind of like outreach sorts of things. And I feel really fortunate, we had 7 teachers sit in on that session. So we had general education teachers, special education teachers. They took time out of their day to help us with our Strategy 3 initiatives. So Susan Rogers, Lauren Manning, Kelly Doolin are all elementary level teachers and related service providers. Then we had Sean Pearson from the high school. Jacob DeHart is a middle school psychologist. So we try to get some diversity there and also with difficult to fill positions. Then we also had Stephanie Dunback and Amy Stedman. So some of those people are Strategy 3 members. Some of them are teacher representatives from our district, but they all sat in on that and had an opportunity. It's really cool how their initiative with the Kansas Education Employment Board ties with Strategy 3, and that's what Dawn had mentioned when she brought me into that conversation. But they have some really cool things going on that fit right with Be the Y, right into Derby Works. So we're really looking for all of these ways to integrate and cross over. One thing to mention from the interviews earlier today that also just connects with all of the other strategic planning reports. One of the candidates that I interviewed today completed the education pathway at Derby High School. And she did the Butler Academy, and she wanted to make sure that I knew that even though she only graduated from Derby High School 2 years ago, she's ready for a teaching job because of all of those credits that she had, and she's gone through that education department. So that's another thing that feels really cool, almost, like that full circle and seeing these initiatives that have been in place before, and it just gives us the energy to continue on and really cool things going on with that. So there is a little bit more in the report there, but those were the things that I wanted to focus on with you this evening, so I'll stand for any questions. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Next one, Strategy 4, Burke Jones.
Good evening. I'm Burke Jones, Director of Operations, and I'm the chair of the Strategy 4 Infrastructure Goal. You're going to find out everything you want to know about this at the last board meeting of the month, but what I will say is that we have essentially completed all the work at this point. We've had professional evaluations of all of our mechanical systems across the district with years that those items should be replaced, what their life expectancy is, and what the cost will be associated with that. We've taken that data and put it into a 10-year plan. I think it's a real testament to our maintenance crews because we have kept units running far past their expected life expectancy. But when we look at the cost of that, we've spent more in labor and parts than we would have just replacing a unit. So I think this is going to be a big benefit to us moving forward. And I look forward to really diving into it with you at the last board meeting in March. I'll be happy to answer any specific questions you might have right now. All right. Thank you.
And our last area is Strategy 5, and we have Luann. Thanks.
Good evening. Lou Ann Sparks, Director of Alternative Learning and co-chair of our Strategy 5 Community Committee. Tonight, I just want to give you a little bit of an update. Our overall goal for the fourth year has been to really go back and review and check in on those partnerships that we have developed through year 1 and 2. We've been working on updating the information in that resource document. But the most exciting step is, at this point, we are now collaborating with Strategy 2. As you know, that there has been a survey sent out, and we're really trying to expand our career technical education, our CTE pathways. And so in doing so, we have Strategy 2 collecting information, as well as Strategy 5 bringing that information together. We will be taking the results of that survey and bringing that all together. We are in the final stages of bringing that together, and we will be putting that into a collective resource document for use of all Derby School staff. And it's really an important document because so many times our staff have pockets and partnerships within that building, but as we are working with civic engagement, getting those community practices in place, we need to be able to connect all those pieces together for our students, whether they're a kindergartner, a grade schooler, middle schooler, or high schooler. So we have been working and getting that database part together. In December, we participated in community service ourselves through writing a grant through the Kansas Beats the Virus. We have just about got all of our family care packages put together. We're hoping to finish up this Friday, and then after spring break, they will be delivered to our families that have been identified as having a need. And in the family care package, we will have materials to help support the health and hygiene. We also have a bilingual card, which again is kind of interesting because that ties back to Strategy 1 with our communications and working with bilingual, getting that information out to our families. We also will be putting student hygiene kits in those family kits. So if a parent or family group has 5 children, they will have 5 individual hygiene kits put into the family kit as well. So we are really excited to kind of work collectively as a team. We've also been working with our partners with AmeriCorps to bring this together. They've worked on weekends, and we've been working in the evenings, and we're excited to represent our part of the Derby Cares community by completing this. So we're actively working. We're continuing to move forward in our goals, and with that, I will stand for any questions. Thank you.
That concludes all the updates. The committees have been working really hard to progress. We are on track. We will have, again, one final report, but on track to get everything completed this year. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, next up under discussion is item 7A, which is the Tanglewood Circle Drive entrance, paving request for proposal with Burke Jones.
Hi, Burke Jones, Director of Operations. We had planned with this year's capital outlay to replace the Circle Drive, which is kind of the bus drop-off area at Tanglewood. This would include both approaches and then do concrete paving instead of asphalt paving, which is one of the things we're trying to look at as we replace pavement to go into those high, heavy use areas with concrete instead of asphalt. So this is just the proposal to go and solicit bids for that. So with that, I would stand for any questions.
Any questions for Burke? Okay. Don't see any. Thank you. And item 7B is job description with Becky Mader.
All right, thank you. Becky Mader, Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources. We have revised a job description to more accurately reflect the responsibilities of this particular position. We would plan to bring it back to the March 25th board meeting for approval. 22nd board meeting, March 22nd, I apologize, for approval. And the job description is job description 302. It's the secretary to the assistant superintendent of curriculum and instruction.
Any questions on this one? My only question, this is a current position, just updating the role.
Correct.
This person does a lot.
This person does a lot.
Yes, I did notice that.
And there was more added in when we revised the
Yes.
job description, yes.
Yes, okay, very good. Thanks, Becky.
Uh-huh.
All right, item 7C is Panther Learning Academy WSU Tech course with Dr. Holly Putnam Jackson.
Good evening, Dr. Putnam Jackson, Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum. You are absolutely right. The person on that job description does a whole lot to keep everyone moving in the right direction. So she will be missed, but is retiring, and we cannot compete with grandchildren. So the Panther Learning Academy WSU Tech course that is on the agenda for this evening is a medication aid. A certified medication aid. The WSU Tech course consists of 5 hours of work that students would typically go to WSU Tech for, enroll in the course, and pay. And we are very fortunate with our partnership with WSU Tech and the Panther Learning Academy that Luann Sparks has been working and cultivating, that they have offered as part of our CNA and phlebotomy and medical terminology coursework that we have taken on this year, to offer a course, both for DHS students and others, in the evening beginning in May, that would run through June, that would give our students 5 hours of credit. They would be able to do internships at Derby Rehab Center on Saturday, and then leave both with us receiving the credit for the certification, our students receiving the certificate. That is a really nice add-on for any of our students that are pursuing the CNA or other medical certificates that are part right now of our Panther Learning Academy. So with that, I will stand for any questions that you might have. You'll see that you have the competencies and details for the course included in your information there, but we are really excited to see this opportunity come to our students through this partnership and for it to be offered to them for free.
Any questions, comments for Holly?
I just have one
Go ahead.
question. So you said it was 5 hours, is that a 5 hours WSU credits? So, okay. Okay, that's awesome, and it's free of charge to our students.
Isn't that amazing?
It's
Yep.
amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And my question was, so they would actually come away with is it a CNA designation after this is over, or is it steps towards that?
So this would be kind of a stack-on for CNA. So it's
Okay.
kind of like I've got my CNA, now I'm adding a certified medication
Gotcha.
aid
Okay.
or phlebotomy or something else that's a skill that distinguishes me from other people with the similar credential.
Okay,
Mhm.
very good, thank you.
Okay.
All right, I think we're good.
Thanks.
All right, moving on to action tonight. Item 8A is board policies with Heather Bohati.
Tonight, bring before you the policies that were presented at the last Board of Education meeting. These, again, are updates from Kansas Association of School Boards, and we would request your approval.
So moved.
Okay, we've got
Second.
a motion and a second. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All right, looks like it's approved 7-0. Next item is the 2021-2022 calendar with Heather also.
Okay. Also presented at the last Board of Education meeting was the calendar for the next year. Again, I would point out the work that the calendar committee did. In your packet is the calendar we're recommending tonight for approval. A few other things to point out again, Cooper and Oaklawn building start times changed as indicated that are on what time they open up the building is on the calendar. And then the other one is requesting approval that for 12-month employees an additional day, so 3 paid days at winter break plus the one at New Year's to be more in line with what is occurring in the surrounding area. So tonight would request your approval for those items.
So moved.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, approved 7-0. And thank you to the committee for the work. There's a lot, I know, that goes into that. So
We will pass
appreciate
that on. Appreciate those that served on there.
Next up is Derby North Middle School Outdoor Classroom Dock Contract Award. John Weir.
Good evening again, John Regier, Director of Finance. At a previous Board of Education meeting, we brought the RFP proposal to solicit bids for the Derby North Outdoor Classroom Dock. I know Mr. Smith went over his plans for the outdoor classroom, and this would be a great addition to that. With that, we did get one company back. They submitted a bid at $27,513.27. That will be paid through the MCAS grant in full. For now, I ask for your approval to award this contract.
So moved.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? My only question was on the bid. I know this maybe isn't as big a deal since it's a grant covering the cost, but is there not a lot of dock people that to provide bids, or do we know why there's just one?
That I don't know. I would assume with being a landlocked state, there's not, and if you're lakes around, there's not that many options. The company that did submit a bid has done work at Dekarsky Park as well as Sedgwick County Park. So they seem to be the dock builder in the area.
Got you.
So
They're a known entity. Okay,
They are.
very good. All right. I don't see any other questions, comments, so we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor, raise your hand. All right, approved 7-0.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Next up is 8D Derby Middle School Kitchen Remodel, Burt Jones.
Good evening. Tonight I bring before you the first project that will be funding from the remaining bond funds. Discussed this a little bit last time, but at the Derby Middle School, that is our oldest kitchen in the district. We had allocated money in an allowance when we brought the GMP before you for kitchen equipment. As we looked at that, just replacing kitchen equipment isn't the right answer. That kitchen workflow is not set up for the way that we use the kitchen today. There's also safety issues in that kitchen that we wanted to address. And so because of that, we're doing the design shows a considerable amount of relocation and modifications that are happening in that kitchen. What that does is a lot of slab cutting for new waste lines. It drives us into putting in a grease interceptor in that line. So the cost is more significant than what we can cover through contingency amount already in the project. And so what I'm asking for tonight is an allowance of $80,000 to cover the amount of that kitchen work. It will more than likely be less than $80,000, and then we would just keep that money in that project, which would then eventually flow back into the overall bond budget, the amount that isn't spent. So I would recommend approval of this tonight, and I would stand for any questions.
So moved.
I have just one question. As far as the 80,000, was that the number we talked about
Yeah.
last meeting? I mean, you had talked about an $80,000 number then, right?
Right, that was the same amount.
Okay. I will second Matthew's motion. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor, raise your hand. All right, 7-0.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bert. And the final item under action is 8E renewal of contracts for directors and athletic director.
tonight bring before you the names and positions for renewal contracts we have for directors, athletic directors. We have a lot of great individuals working in our district. This list is one of those, and we'd request your approval.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Assuming there's probably not any discussion, but I'll ask. All those in favor, raise your hand.
I just don't know.
Mark's question. You can't do that, Mark. Looks like 7-0.
You caused some, no, I'm just kidding.
There's always a joker. All right, so that concludes action, right?
It
Okay.
does.
Thanks, Heather. So moving on, item 9A is executive session. And I will move that the board go into executive session for the purpose of discussing matters relating to employer-employee negotiations, whether or not in consultation with the representative or representatives of this body or agency to protect the district's right to the confidentiality of its negotiating position and the public interest for 15 minutes following a 5-minute break. The executive session will include all of the board members present and Heather Bohati, Becky Mader, Dr. Holly Putnam Jackson, and John Regier. The open meeting will resume virtually here. The open meeting will resume here at 8:40. All right, so that was my motion. Did you get that? Okay, we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor? Okay, 7-0. Thank you. All right, so I will make a motion that we adjourn our meeting for tonight. Motion and second. All those in favor? We got all of us in here, 7-0. Thank you.